competitors.
Yeah, see how it goes here. Ross Merriam wins the die roll. Turn 1, Island. Siren Storm Tamer.
Mono Blue also has those unbeatable draws with Curious Obsession and Protection that not a lot of decks can beat.
And this is looking like one of those. Goodwin to 18 off that Obsession. Here's a Growth Spiral on turn 2 for Goodwin. Puts a forest onto the battlefield. Casts the Llanowar Elves.
That was a really fast start from Goodwin. And now Merriam's going to have to basically run containment for the rest of the game, but it shouldn't be that difficult considering he has a good bit of pressure and gets to draw an extra card every turn.
Spectral Sailor joined the party. There was an attack for 3. Something's funky with the life totals, but Goodwin should be at 16 off of that. Merriam misses his land drop. As we mentioned, though, there's a higher volume of 2-mana counterspells. There's a Lookout's Dispersal. It takes care of Cavalier of Thorns.
And it looks like he drew Wizard's Retort also, and if I'm not mistaken, Siren Storm Tamer is a wizard, so he's got the next big spell locked up as well.
So keeps connecting. That was another attack for 3. Goodwin went to 13 there, but now we see Hydroid Krasis, X equals 4, so he'll be going to 15. Merriam's still missing that land drop, but he will Wizard's Retort the Krasis. We'll go back to Merriam. Attacks Goodwin to 12.
Ross here just looking for that third land and finally found it, and now he's going to be able to effectively start playing 2 spells a turn here probably. But let's see if Jordan can finally punch through this wall of counterspells.
Merriam deploys Terramander. We'll see what Goodwin can do about it. Big tap, Hydroid Krasis, X equals 5. So we'll go to 14. Draw 2 cards. See if Merriam counters the body there. Merfolk Trickster will tap it, but the Krasis is on the battlefield.
Now this is kind of the downside of playing mono blue when your opponent isn't playing interaction. Ross has multiple copies of Dive Down kind of stuck in his hand, but the rest of his hand is actually quite good. You know, he's got like just a ton of creatures, so even if the worst case scenario happens, Ross can just say, okay, time to turn the corner, let's just deploy 400 creatures.
Last attack put Goodwin to 8. Another Storm Tamer was deployed. We're seeing a Jade Light Ranger exploring for Goodwin. Other Jade Light Rangers of the graveyard. Cavalier of Thorns, looking at what to do with that one. That one's left on top.
Yeah, it has reach. We saw Cavalier of Thorns' reach ability come up in our previous match with Paul Muller's Elementals deck against the Azorius Flyers deck from Montefusco. And here I think it's going to play a similar role.
Tapped Breeding Pool is the land for Goodwin. Unsummon and
one
step.
of unsummon, and if Ross is doing that, the game is likely over. I cannot imagine that he would do that if it wasn't going to effectively close the game out.
So there was an attack. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 came across. So Goodwin fell to 3 there. And then a Tempest Djinn shows up, and as well as another island. So it's a 4-power Djinn.
Yeah, and notably Ross leaving up 1 blue mana here for those Siren Storm Tamers to counter Mass Manipulation. So if Jordan wants to use Mass Manipulation, he has to have 2 ways to get through the 2 Storm Tamers before casting it.
And he's got a lot of mana, but I don't know if he has that much.
Now he could play the Cavalier of Thorns, get another land, and then play like a medium-sized Hydroid Krasis, and that might be enough to keep him from dying, but unclear exactly just because we're having those minor technical issues. And of course this was recorded in the past, so there's no real way to fix it at the moment.
Because we live in the future.
Right.
It's like 9 lands now for Goodwin and Llanowar Elves. Start by tapping all the forests and the elf for a Cavalier of Thorns. Puts an island on the battlefield.
Yeah, and here comes a big old Hydroid Krasis. I believe it's like a 4/4.
Merriam shows that he can activate the Terramander with an island in hand, and he's going to have lethal. So Goodwin picks him up. Ross Merriam up in the first game.
Yeah, and now we'll go over the sideboards here just for y'all, one at a time. Goodwin here going to be looking for some help. In the sideboard, he's got 4 copies of Negate, 4 Cerulean Drink, 3 Veil Summer, and 4 Voracious Hydra. The card that screams out to me is Veil Summer. The card seems very strong in the matchup. 1 green to protect your spell from a counter spell and draw a card. Potentially keep your creature from getting tapped by a Merfolk Trickster and draw a card. Voracious Hydra, if big enough, can fight an opposing creature. I kind of like that idea just because you just want some amount of interaction. And you might want to get something like Tomio Collector Tails out of your deck because that's not really the type of game plan you're really going for.
And presumably Ross is interested in boarding out dive downs in some capacity as well.
Yeah. And then last but not least, like some number of negates is probably okay to bring in just because Ross has so many counterspells. But I never want to be the person bringing in the counterspells against the Spell Pierce deck. That's never really where you want to be. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, Merriam's deck largely just more efficient. So we'll take a look at Merriam's sideboard. 2 Ether Gust, 3 Cerulean Drake, a Tail's End, 2 Essence Capture, a Surge Mare, 3 Entrancing Melody, and 3 Negate.
Ether Gust stands out to me as a phenomenal card here. These Simic decks are very green-oriented, and Gust can effectively memory lapse a spell, which is nice. Tail's End, I don't think should come in. Essence Capture might come in just because it stops Hydrocrisis, the body of it anyway, and the Cavalier of Thorns. And then, I don't know, maybe some Entrancing Melodies just to make sure you can get through a Hydroid Crisis.
So we're underway in game number 2. It was a turn 2 Incubation Druid for Goodwin on the play. Now facing down a Curious Spectral Sailor. So Goodwin's at 18 here. It looks like we're still having those issues with the life totals, but here is a Voracious Hydra. Now that's coming in with 2 counters, which means it can try to fight this Spectral Sailor. And that happens. Sailor is down.
Yeah, I mean, we expected Ross to actually board out his dive downs, and that's why Voracious Hydra here is able to stick and do some work. The deck has changed.
Okay, so here's Surge Mare from Merriam trying to get back on the battlefield. And we'll go to Goodwin.
You know what color creatures can't block Surge Mare?
The green ones.
The green ones. They can't block.
Yeah, Surge Mare is now Curious. That'll connect. Goodwin down to 17. Merriam draws a card. And also draws and discards a card from the Surge Mare.
Yep. Deploys 2 copies of Terramander here, just trying to get on the board as much as possible. Still holding up 1 blue. That could mean Spell Pierce if he wants to protect himself from mass manipulation. And after Goodwin adapts that Incubation Druid, there's a good chance that we see some big spell like that here.
So he adapts to that. The Hydra connected, Merriam to 18. And here's a big Hydroid Crisis. X equals 6. Goodwin back to 20.
Yeah, effectively negating a lot of Merriam's offense. And if he doesn't have a way to get the Hydro Crisis off the battlefield, the Terramanders are effectively blanked, and he's actually just losing the race by a lot.
So he'll attack for 1 again with the Mare. Goodwin to 19. Merriam will do some card drawing. Cast an Opt, strides to the bottom.
That Essence Capture is a bit too little too late, if you ask me.
Yeah, not lining up with being pretty far behind in the battlefield, as we see all 3 creatures attacking, the 3-power Druid as well as the 2-power Hydra and the 6-power Hydroid Crisis. Looks like all of those connected.
Well, this is actually pretty good for Ross here. He's going to get Essence Capture and put a counter on the Surge Mare. The shields are down for Goodwin. He's able to deploy a couple chump blockers, but that trample from Hydro Crisis might come back to bite Ross here in a minute.
I believe Merriam to now be at 7.
I was just letting you count. I'm bad at math anyway, apparently.
Fair enough.
Wow. Merfolk Trickster was one of the draws here for Ross over the last few turns, and that's a good one. And connects here again with a Surge Mare, gets to loot away an island while drawing a card from the Obsession.
Terramander connected as well, so Goodwin to 17. Post-combat Curious Obsession.
Just using his mana as efficiently as possible, which matters a lot with things like Terramander and Spectral Sailor.
Big tap for Goodwin. Here's a Cavalier of Thorns. It resolves. Forest enters the battlefield.
I'm also a little surprised Ross at some point didn't just like start pumping Surge Mare a bunch, but I guess Jordan Goodwin's life total is just too high.
Merfolk Trickster taps down the Crisis. Looks like the Voracious Hydra is going to attack for 2. Looks like Llanowar Elves runs into Merfolk Trickster as well. Merriam will file 5 from the Hydra, though. Llanowar Elves and another Cavalier of Thorns post-combat. Another Force enters the battlefield. Tons of power on Goodwin's side now.
Now Ross has a couple of decisions to make how he's going to play out these next few turns. Surge Mare drawing a bunch of extra cards could help him stabilize in the face of all this raw power, but these bodies are just outclassing him.
Attack with the Surge Mare. It now has 3 power, so Goodwin to 14.
Discards Wizard's Retort. That's interesting. It's possible that he just needed to find one instant sorcery to be able to adapt both Terramanders in the same turn.
Post-combat, he's going to cast an Opt. Looks like there's a Tempest Djinn in hand. Already has 6 Highlands on the battlefield, so that could trade with the Krasis or the Cavaliers. Thinking a lot about this Opt. Merriam is at 5, not 20. So that means all the large creatures over there for Goodwin are lethal. He'll cast Tempest Djinn. We'll go back Goodwin's way.
This battlefield is super gummed up, but I think Goodwin here is just fine, just chunking in with a lot of these larger creatures.
And everybody is attacking. Merriam's going to line up some blocks. Tempest Djinn jumping in front of the Krasis, so there's already 2 trample damage from that. Something in front of everything without trample, looks like.
Now he may want to put, I think he has a dive down in hand, so he may want to put Terramander on the elf, and then dive down it to ensure that he gets to keep one large creature around. But I guess he could put Trickster on elf. Or I guess he can dive down the other Terramander that's blocking and keep both Terramanders around and just soak the damage from the Voracious Hydra and the Llanowar Elves.
The blocks he had line up would have had him taking lethal, but looks like just 3 comes across because he dived down to save the Djinn.
Fair enough.
Follow-up Hydroid Krasis for Goodwin. That's a problem. That's X equals 8, so he's going to go back to 18. So Merriam now still has that Surge Mare. He has 1 Terramander and the Tempest Djinn.
It's one of those games where Ross has been losing for like 6 turns, but Curious Obsession just lets him, keep grinding and grinding and grinding, but ultimately falls flat in the face of so much raw power from Jordan Goodwin's Semi-Mass Manipulation deck. But that's now 1-1. We're going to game 3.
And Merriam has officially seen enough, so sideboarding again. He's looking at bringing in some entrancing melodies here.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally your best answer to something like a Hydroid Krasis, where it's a really large creature with a really small converted mana cost. It's unique in that effect, and sometimes you just use it to take like an Incubation Druid that's adapted or something,
Probably some situations where a Voracious Hydra wouldn't be a bad grab.
Sure. Much like Hydroid Krasis, once it's on the battlefield, its converted mana cost is just 2. Cards like Entrancing Melody are significantly better in those scenarios.
Voracious Hydra, just one of many cards. Pretty interesting design, seeing play already from Core Set 2020. Green X, it's a 0/1 with trample. Enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters, and you can choose to either fight at that base level or double the number of counters on it.
Yeah, and unlike most Hydras, it actually starts with 1 toughness, I believe. So for 4 mana, you get a 2/3 that fights something. That's like the baseline or whatever, and that's pretty darn good.
Right, we're underway in game 3. Merriam has an Opt on end step versus Goodwin's Llanowar Elves. He'll start his turn 2 with another Opt, and Merriam will pass. See what Goodwin can do. Attack with Llanowar Elves. Merriam to 19.
Great news for Ross if the turn 2 play from Jordan after the Elf is attack for 1.
And here's one that's hard to fight with Voracious Hydra. Tempest Djinn on turn 3 for Merriam.
Yeah, it's possible he just learned his lesson. But a 2/2 Hydroid Krasis is not really what the doctor ordered. And Ross here might be turning the corner here as early as turn 4 with that Tempest Djinn.
So Goodwin gained a life, but now the Tempest Djinn knocks him to 18. A second Tempest Djinn deployed. No 4th land. Goodwin will cast a Nissa who shakes the world, wakes up a forest. Both Djinns attacking the Nissa. Prompts a chump block from the Krasis. Entrancing Melody will gain control of the 3/3 forest.
Now, notably, though, it does have Summoning Sickness, so Ross couldn't play a 2-mana counterspell here. Just has access to that 1 blue for the dive down he has in hand right now.
Another forest will wake up for Goodwin. Nissa to 4. And here's a Voracious Hydra. Believe for 4. Dive down person for 6.
Yeah, you got to float the 2 first
Ah, right.
before untapping with the Nissa.
Dive down still saves Tempest Shin, though.
That is true. And it doesn't have reach, so these Tempest Shins are still going to keep coming across.
Ooh, Curious Obsession on both Jins.
It looks like
Nissa goes down, 4 comes across.
Yep.
Goodwin will go to 14.
Now there's Trickster on the upkeep to tap the Elf was countered by Veil of Summer.
There's an attack for 6 from the Hydra. Merriam will fall to 13. Incubation Druid deployed for Goodwin. We'll go back to Merriam. Here's land number 5.
Yeah, this is just an insane amount of damage. I don't think Goodwin can really fight through it.
The attack would have been lethal if not for the chump block with the Elf. Goodwin now falling to 2.
Yeah, now you can just steal that 6/6 for 4 mana. Or steals the Incubation Druid. What a heads-up play from Ross. Just constricting the mana. The 6-power creature, just nothing in the face of all those flyers.
Yeah, that's going to do it. Ross Merriam going to be 2-1 over Jordan Goodwin there.